Welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in. Quick episode here today with John Buffery, Avalanche expert. Has been out with the best of the best. Travis Rice, Craig Kelly, and beyond. I was curious to talk to somebody, a professional, about the season, and why not John Buffery? He's the best of the best. And as somebody who spends a lot of time in the mountains, I was kind of interested for selfish reasons to be like, what the hell is going on this year and how should I navigate this season? So I get home safely because we got shit to do, people to see, and a long life ahead of us. So quick episode here with the legend John Buffery. Enjoy. I also did a full-length episode with him December 1st, 2020. If you would like to hear more from John, tune into that episode. As always, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy.
Don't worry. Like and subscribe. Airtime Podcast. Turn that bell on.
Cody,
Don't miss an episode.
this is the battery that you grabbed this morning?
Welcome back to the show. We got a quick episode today with the legend. I don't want to pump your ego too much, but definitely somebody who has helped all of the snowboard world, core and not, make better decisions. We have John Buffery on the podcast. Thanks for joining us again. If you want to hear a more in-depth podcast, I did a full length with him about 2 years ago. I forget the episode number, but maybe we can quickly start with what you do exactly, and then we can touch quickly on your trip to Japan.
Cool, man. Yeah. Hi, Jody. Nice to see you again. And hey, by the way, great article in King Snow magazine, man. That was really cool. Thanks, man. Sweet. You caught up on the essence of it so well.
Thank you for taking the time to say anything. As somebody who personally knew Craig Kelly, that means a lot. I was talking with Craig's daughter, Olivia, and I was pretty nervous for that one because over the years I've built a relationship with her.
Sure.
And speaking on somebody that you didn't know personally and somebody that I look up to as much as Craig Kelly, writing an article felt I wrote it in my post, but yeah, I definitely had a little bit of imposter syndrome, feeling like I wasn't the one who should be writing something on his passing. So it was flattering, but definitely something for the first time I felt like I don't want to fuck this up. I put a crazy amount of work into it, which probably most people wouldn't see, but I don't write articles typically, and to write something on somebody like Craig was really special. So thank you.
That's okay, man. Yeah, no, I think a lot of the viewers sitting in the same seat as you, they know of him, but didn't know as much as you brought forward. And it was so that you're speaking from a voice of a lot of people. I thought it was really well done.
Thank you very much. So maybe just touch a little bit on what John Buffery does for maybe a living and just how you got to where you're at today.
All right, man. Yeah. I presently work for the British Columbia Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure in the Avalanche program. I'm the senior avalanche officer, which I'm the technical advisor for our 8 programs doing avalanche control through all the mountain passes throughout BC. It's a fantastic job. I really like it. I've been doing it 15 years. And I still do some itinerant guiding, which is what I did 15 years prior to that. So mostly just kind of, anywhere and everywhere. Lately, I've just been very tailored to who I do, what I do, where I go. So I'm at that age, as you kind of laid it out there. I kind of do what I want these days as an intermittent guide, as well as my full-time avalanche work. So that's what I've been doing lately. And I hooked up with some good friends that wanted to go to Japan. So my manager was elegant enough to recognize the work I had done prior and gave me the week off to go there. And I've been there quite a few times. In the early times with Craig, in the early 90s, where actually we started up the Japanese Avalanche Foundation, teaching 5-day advanced RAC courses, recreational avalanche courses, to the Japanese snowboarding world. And then, yeah, that evolved into what is now a marriage between the Japanese Avalanche Network and the Canadian Avalanche Association to their level 1 in Japan. Anyway, side story. So we went to Hakuba, this small group of us, and I know the area well. And wow, when that place is going off, the riding in the trees in the lower half alpine and apron of the Japanese Alps is out of this world. It's spectacular. It was a bit scratchy. We hit it just as the rainstorm went to the mountaintops all over Japan, even up in Hokkaido. But there was a bit of snow here and there, and we scraped and looked, and we found some stuff, and it was fun, exciting. We kind of mountaineering stuff. It was good. It was really fun.
You had to work for it. You had to earn your turns.
That's what I do, right? I don't mind it at all, man. It was really great. Like I say, not like it has been or could be or as I've experienced prior, but it's fun. It's great.
What?
Good food, onsens, good people.
What would you say makes going to Japan so special?
I think the culture, really. I mean, just when you go, you can just feel the culture and the Shinto religion and just the respect that everyone has for what it is they do. When that culture is engaged in their job, everybody's into their job, so it seems, and it's just extended into everything you see. And it's a philosophy of quality. I really like it. It's safe, it's friendly, learning new things, the food, the onsens, and it's a different place to ride. It's different trees, the deciduous forest of beech and birch, and it's outstanding.
I gotta say, I love when people take pride in their job.
It's interesting to, some of the service industry where they actually run between you and what it is their task to do to make things happen. It's quite unique. It's really it's a beautiful thing. Hey, Jody, just the other thing about that relates to my work, as I said, we did have that rainstorm to the top, and it did eventually freeze with a bit of snow on top of it, which was wind blown and a bit faceted on this really, really hard crust. The people I were with watched this storm that was coming in and asked me, "Do you think we should stay and ride this new storm coming?" And I was like, I don't. I think that there's going to be an issue here with the next series of storms on this crust. And so sad to say that shortly after we left, there were 4 incidences of avalanches with 5 people caught and dead just after us in that storm. So it kind of comes to just recognizing what's out there. I think maybe there's a stigma that there aren't avalanches in Japan very much, but snow is snow, and it's the same everywhere. It depends on the weather, but avalanches are pretty much anywhere there's snow in mountains.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of snow to bury somebody, and sometimes you see in the most simple of terrain on a low slope as low as like 20 degrees. And if you think of, I always like to think of like what one shovelful of snow and how much that weighs. And when you see a face as small as 30, 40 feet, it's like if you're in an awkward position and that snow comes on top of you, that's still a lot of snow. And it only takes for you to be under an inch, and that's the difference. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, to that point, how much does it take to fill in your airway? Not much. If you get slammed with a pack or a sled or something that lands on top of you in snow, I mean, it's tricky. It's tricky business.
Well, my condolences goes to those 5 members of our community, because that's tragic in itself. Maybe on that note, that can add some sort of context for people to hopefully take those tragedies and turn them into a positive so they can make better decisions with their crew so we can have less and less of this moving forward.
Right on, man. Totally agree.
On that note, so the Avery reports for at least the western regions here in British Columbia, North America almost, have been tricky to say the least this year. Maybe we could start with what makes this snowpack maybe a little bit more challenging and different than other years.
Yeah. Reading and participating in snow stratigraphy, snow profiling throughout the provinces, and as you say, North America, well, even abroad. What's different this year, but not strictly unusual, you have these cycles. I would say 8 years ago, 2014 was somewhat similar, where it's generally a shallower snowpack than we're normally used to, which is a change, and the change should kind of put alarm bells. How was laden down at the beginning of the season with a snowpack that came in and got pretty cold, didn't really help a nice strong basal layer of consolidated snow. It was porous, we'll say. It had a lot of air in it, and that cold weather just allowed the water vapor to move quickly through it from zero at the ground to the shallow snow, and it just never bonded that well. And then we had a bit of a crust that came in from a rainstorm, a little bit of light snow, and a surface hoar. That combination in about the 10 centimeters that it occurred on the day, mid-November, was just, the basics for a problem, a basal layer problem, PWL for the beginning of the season. What is different this year to some years where we have a similar beginning when we have a rainstorm on snow is that, again, it stayed cold and we never got a large snowfall that crushed it, that mechanically compressed it. We didn't get it. We had drips and drabs with more clear weather creating a layer of surface hoar and another light snow load. And these accumulated to what now? 5 different problem layers, avalanche layers that we're looking at that, again, they haven't really consolidated to a couple of things, to either bond as a unit above the weakness and make it harder to penetrate into the weakness down low, but they themselves are also easier steps as a rider to be the catalyst to collapsing those layers from, just recently a layer end of January, middle of January, beginning of January, Christmas. I mean, all those layers as they were happening, now they are almost integrated with, you can be the catalyst to capturing something that's 30 centimeters to 70 centimeters down, which could step down to the meter to the meter and a half, down to these very basal weak layers that occurred in November. It's a crazy year. I'm calling it brittle this year. And that's what I think. I think it's a different year because it's brittle, it's shallower, and it's a little colder. It's not condensed, it's not consolidated.
Okay. So being out in the mountains myself is one of my favorite places to venture, as well as yourself. I've been reading the reports, and us as a crew tend to talk about these things. And we've been reading a lot on it's the worst that it's been in 20 years since the unfortunate passing of Craig and a lot of other individuals that year, one of the highest years we've seen. Would you agree? And what's the scale as far as like the size that you could potentially see? Are we talking like size 1 that we could maybe like trigger, or you were kind of mentioning there going down to that maybe further layer?
Yeah, I would say that it's not exactly like it was 20 years ago for the same problem. That seemed to be prominence of that layer was radical and very clear in your face. What we have now are a series of layers that, like I just laid there out, could penetrate down lower. A little bit different, but basically the same in that it's a lower instability in the mountain pack. I was reading on our information exchange for the professional website from the CAA, a recording of one of the largest avalanches that occurred naturally in quite some years, a size 4.5 up in Selkirk Mountain Experience area. So that's kind of what exists. You know, we're a little shallower than normally at this time of year. So I would say that, you know, we may not see the potential to massive avalanches, but 4.5 as a size is huge. And that went down to this layer. I think, like I was saying there, at this point, it'd be tricky for us, you as a rider, to penetrate to that layer, but there's steps in between, all these little surface hoar layers that are buried 30 to 50, and then the next one at 80, and then the next one at 50. So it would step down. So if you were, you know, found that sweet spot to penetrate to the first one, it drags along the slope and then steps down to the lower, creates more weight, more drag. That slope goes down the slope further. That finds a sweet spot down around the basal area where there's rocks, and then you're in it, and you're getting scraped through rocks, which is the thing about it too. As you get down to the basal layers and you're kind of in that terrain getting mulched up by the snow, it's going to be horrific from just the geography that's on the ground. The other thing I think, Jody, kind of watch for, you know, in these unusual things that are not present in us is start to work with your terrain a little bit more strictly. Like, go back to the rules that you already know to be true. Give that credence of a large avalanche path a little bit more respect. So if you're transitioning for your split board from riding down to up, just go a little further out than normal, and just play all the rules. Be careful that there's no one riding above you, and then all the basic rules we know that we maybe have lost, where we lean on our avalanche hazard analysis and say, well, the hazard's low, so I can let go of my rules of thumb. Let's not do that. Let's go back to the rules of thumb and hold on to those strictly this year, and give the respect we need to the consequences that could be.
So you touched on 4.5, just for some of the people who maybe haven't taken their avalanche courses and are just kind of listening. What for a size, it goes from 1 to 5. You said 4.5. How big of an avalanche is a natural 4.5?
Yeah, good point. This recording of an avalanche ran, I think, about 1,600 meters vertical, so almost 6,000 feet or so. Was about a third to almost half a kilometer wide, and was 2 meters deep in depth as a slab. And normally, with that much force, when it hits something, if there's it would take out a forest. If it was in the way, it would destroy a village per se. It would certainly take a whole train and just pick it up and throw it around. It's a very large, impactful avalanche.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and here's the other thing: if you were
yeah.
close to that, and you were standing close, but you were in a safe space, that air blast associated with it would go into your lungs and explode your alveoli, and you would drown 1 day later and die.
Okay. That was I'm actually glad you said that, because I always wondered, when I see these massive avalanches, and you see more and more because of everybody filming everything, people standing at the bottom of these like massive avalanches, and then you just see the last, like, their phone just drop, and then they start running because they realize the wind and just the sheer, like, is going to be crazy. And then at a 4.5, you're saying that's going to toast the inside of your lungs. That's something that I've never heard before.
Yep. It's been recorded up in Rogers Pass with all these the military doing the explosives work with the howitzers in the early days.
Wow. Okay. So how, or should backcountry enthusiasts take like a different approach to this season? You were saying giving everything a bit more space. And if so, which you made clearly, what would you like to see snowboard, ski, sled crews do a little differently?
I just want everybody to give the improbable more respect. Um, Certainly, think a bit more of stratigraphy on the ground at the basal layer. Just start thinking where it's rocky, and just watch it, man. Look for some of the more stable slopes per se, like more linear, planar, but not too rocky. And then think of the consequences. Let's not go into crevassed terrain where there's avalanche terrain above it. The consequences of that are going to stuff you into the crack as well as like a small avalanche could. Let's start watching for the cornices too. We're kind of just moving into that mid-season now where the cornices are going to start to be brittle too. Let's just be really respectful of all the other hazards that the mountains have with us, and start working on different things with your riding. I don't really know, but let's not go for the really hard, tricky, exposed pieces. Let's just work on some style, and let's try that. That's what I would suggest.
Okay. My next question was going to be something along the lines of, what do you think in specific types of terrain might be the most dangerous? But you pointed out rocks there, cornices. What about like pillows? Is that a low enough elevation that those should be fine? Or are you worried that school bus sized pillows are going to be breaking off? And
Yeah, possibly, but it's not a really great year for pillows, but pillows as pieces are fine. I'm good with all pillows. They're gonna break and roll, and just go for it, man.
All right. So my next question is actually a Patreon question from Jacob Erickson from Tribute Board Shop. He says, why is it important for each individual in the group or crew to have a voice to be heard in the process of making decisions in the backcountry?
Very good question. Thanks, man. There's an old Whistler guide that lives around your area, Scott Favell. I've been in quite a few meetings with him where we're doing some pretty high-end risk assessments and some stuff we've done. And he's always said, if I'm thinking it, someone else has got to be thinking it. So I'm going to be the one to step forward. And as I've gotten and seen more and more, you're obligated. If you're thinking something and it seems sensible and no one said it, I suggest to you, you're obligated to bring it forward. So it's good that, and I would encourage everybody to bring it in with a group discussion. If something needs to be said, you got to say it. Put it on the table, and that's analysis. That's what that is. And then it doesn't have to be. You don't have to have a solution for it. You just have to ask the question, and then allow everybody else to kind of muddle it over, discuss it, and figure out if there's any way to make it better, redeem it, take the right actions to make that question solvable and agreeable to move forward with what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Well articulated. So I've been hearing a lot about remote triggering this year, and seeing a lot of examples of that, whether it be sleds, touring, snowboarding, skiing, all the things we love to do. Maybe touch on what remote triggering is and explain the challenges that can bring.
Sure, absolutely. Often when we look at the shears of a slab avalanche, they react quickly, either to a sudden planar, as an example. The other character that we look at how a slab avalanche can occur is a sudden collapse. What happens now with the surface hoar combination and these crust combinations is you have surface hoar that's like it's a crystal that's standing tall, and they're all intricated, but they're standing tall like cards, standing playing cards. And when you come to an area that a bunch of you may accumulate, or a heavy sled, the pressure bulb of you penetrating down to these weak layers can collapse those layers. And it seems that there's a place where this occurs a little bit more frequently. It's almost flat spots. And it's like placing cards where it has a tensile strength when you push on it, right? It can hold you. But if you load it more and more and more, it can collapse. And it seems like the flats will hold a fair bit of weight, like a flat piece of mountain or like where you accumulate. And then once it reaches a stress point, it will collapse. And that collapse will continue and follow up the mountain or to the other side where there's tension in the slab. And that tension will collapse with the collapsing layer will go up, and then it will break the slab where there's tension in the slope above you often. So that's the difference with this year. All those surface core layers are collapsible layers from where you are, and they continue out from you, which is kind of that wump, to where there's tension in the snow, and then that's where your avalanche will occur.
So you said whoomp there. There's been many of occasions where I'm, building my little step down or whatever like that, and then we'll hear one. Boom, and you hear like the settle of the snow. Like what should go through your mind when you hear that? And how should you kind of navigate that after you hear something? I feel like the mountains are speaking. What are they trying to tell us when they do that?
Well, that's exactly right. It's what I just laid it out there. It's a critical stress breaking. It's a point where you have now initiated a collapse. And if you're standing in good, safe terrain or a small piece of terrain, the consequences are going to be minor, if at all. But if you're standing in big terrain and that collapse, which is the wump, which is the air leaving really quickly, and the collapse, and it travels, and sometimes, rarely, you can actually see it. You can see it. You see the wave. It's rare, but I have seen it. And yeah, it's hard to tell where it's going to come. But if there's a lot of big mountain above you, then there's a chance it could come down on you. So recognize that this is the mountain speaking to you, that you are penetrating that weak layer. You are absolutely.
So then with that data, so the avalanche doesn't come immediately. You hear the whoomp. Should you be like, okay, today, because we heard the whoomp, we should scale down and maybe do the mini golf thing? Or like I've heard that before. And then sometimes we talk as a group, but then we still, make the decision to ride the terrain or whatever. I'm wondering, like, does that mean that is that speaking for like that whole mountain area, or can it be pretty confined? Or
if you think of what the grain is there, it's a surface core. And if you pay attention, you'll know that there are some aspects and some features that are more apt to have the surface core be more prominent or grow or not. So if you're intimate with your terrain and you've seen it every day, like a ski patroller or backcountry area, and you know where the development is of the surface core, you can kind of understand it a little bit and know it. If you know it intimately, you can work with it intimately.
You would agree that this year is a challenging year. So with that said, is there a way that this issue can heal itself, resolve itself? Or is there no, like, if it rains to the top for 2 days, will that crush everything on the bottom layer? Or is it just one of those years at this point, it's just going to be challenging no matter what the weather forecast?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jody. This is an unusual year with so many of these collapsible layers. There's 5 of them. The consequences are big as they step down lower. What would cure this year? It should be a heavy load on the snowpack would do it. The thing with the rain though is that you're going to create another layer. Sure, it may clear things out. It may clear things out, but there are pockets it wouldn't be. I think it's going to be a tough year. I think if we had consistent heavy snows that were warmish, that conglomerated well, that will say bridged over the hazards that are laid down now, that might be okay. So I would say a lot of deep snow.
I like that you said earlier, like maybe it's one of those years where we really embrace and move towards just the style element of snowboarding instead of the gnarly
Yeah.
element. And I mean, I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? I could see some natty Jake Blauvelt stale fishes and methods all day.
I know you do, because you do. I've seen it. Nice, man.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. I mean, but that's what I would do. And I would encourage everybody else to do.
So, what region seems to be, is there one in particular that you would say is the worst? Are you talking about BC as a whole has, these five different challenging layers, or, the West Coast of North America, or where do you feel like, and I'm imagining you kind of have a community of other
Mhm.
professionals. It's like, where are you guys seeing the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I'd say kind of the places where it's a little shallower snow than normal, where it's mostly how people react to their snowpack that they're most familiar with. You think about the Kootenays here, we're used to deeper snowpacks, and it's a little more shallow, and we've seen incidences here with the layers in combination of depths of snow. I would say in your area, I would head have my heads up on maybe the eastern side of where you normally ride, where there's a bit of less snow, subsistence of the storms that have come, where you might be in deep snow at the beginning of the valley, and then as you go further out, you maybe hook a little bit to the east. The snow is going to be quite different. There's a lot of variation with the storms that have come through, and they've been sneaking from the east and sneaking from the northeast, and not just strictly from the south. And the wind transport. I would just say where the snow is shallower than normal, specifically with what you're used to seeing. So you're on the coast and you're used to seeing big fat snowpacks. Uh, just be careful that you're not duped into shallow snowpacks.
So between snowmobiling, riding, hiking, splitting, is there one that you think might be the most problematic out of that group, or do you think all of them have their own risks?
Yeah, man, it's so sneaky. To give one higher priority. I don't know if that's right, because it's all really tricky out there everywhere. Uh, Here in the Coots, we've had some incidences, and yeah, even up in Rogers Pass too. I can't really say. I wouldn't really pin it down for you.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's a good answer. That just lets people know that it's like, oh, it's all the elements combined when going out into the mountains right now are tricky. So, use that to minimize your risk. And maybe on that topic of minimizing risk, are there any simple ways that someone can minimize their risk that come to the top of your head to just kind of like,
Yeah, make good plans. Have good communication. Let's work on that. Let's build a robust system that we're working with our crews and what we're doing, and think of all of the outcomes and fallouts, and be prepared. Let's kind of work on that a little bit, and that'll be a good thing.
so if you're the young up and comer and you're listening to this right now and you feel like, everybody's watching me and this is my big moment, maybe just calm down a little bit. You got a long life ahead of you. And maybe instead of getting a little bit more loose with your group, you should keep it a bit more tight.
Yeah, man. Let's get some radios that work, not just a little. Get a 5-watt radio that hooks into everybody, and a Spot or a Zeo or yeah,
Yeah, I
get
think
get it all. Yeah, bring them.
comms for us as a group, it's wild to see other groups go out there and not all have radios. I understand that going out into the backcountry is really expensive. And so I feel like some people don't want to invest in the full package. But I would just say before going out there, take the time to have the full package of everything you need. And another thing that I've realized as of late that I've recently invested in and our whole crew has is 2 shovels. So the Avi shovel that's in our bag stays in the bag and you don't use it unless there's an avalanche. Because a lot of us, myself included, over the years, you use your shovel to build a jump or a step down. Then later in the day, you go to build another step down and your shovel is frozen together and it's not piecing together properly, or at least as efficiently as one that is just clean and dry. And so with the sled, I feel like we all have a tunnel. It's like, buy another shovel, put it on your tunnel bag, and then use that for building the jump. And then the other shovel that if shit hits the fan, you just know that your tools are going to be like in working order. And that was a nice one that our crew decided to do this year. And I think that it was about time, and it was a good call.
That's a really good idea. You know, you should almost do a little chat on what your tunnel bag looks like on your sled and what you have in it, because I'm sure you have a little bit more of a robust pack
Oh,
on your
I
sled.
mean, after going to the risk maturity courses that Pat Moore, yourself, Jeff at Baldface have been putting on, I feel like the entire snowboard community has a much more robust tunnel bag, or wherever you're going into the backcountry. I feel like we're pretty kitted. I mean, last year, Sean Miskaman hit a step down, overshot, kneed himself in the face, broke his orbital, fully concussed, and we had to get him out. Like, you could just see that the socket under his eye is just gone, and he's not making any sense. And it's like everything that we learned at Baldface came into play, whether it was the first aid training as well as just mitigating all of our risks for the rest of the day, making sure that we had blankets to keep everybody warm, etc. So I can't stress getting your level 1, level 2, and then a big addition I think that everyone should be doing is the first aid, because what's the point of having an avalanche course without the first aid? Because yeah. So big
true,
shout
man.
outs to you guys for doing that, and for you showing up at those events and sharing. I mean, some of the stories that we've shared there, Craig Kelly's included, have, I think, made the entire community make better decisions. So kudos to you for showing up every year.
Yeah, it brings such warmth to my heart to have heard and seen our participants kind of get out into the real world and come back and say, "Hey, man, this is what I saw and did," and it feels a life accomplishment to have known that you've done some good and effects to our world.
Oh, thanks to you for teaching us. You need the mentors in life, and yeah, I mean, without people like you and Jeff and Pat Moore for putting on those courses, and everybody showing up and everybody taking it seriously. Like,
Yeah,
everybody is there to learn. And a big shout outs to Gimbal God, Spenny. He actually made this. I don't know if you were on that email, but he made that incredible email for everybody at Baldface about how to kind of navigate not navigate, but all of the learnings into one file, and really organized and well put together. And I looked at that twice this season, so I'm not sure if he's going to listen to this, but thank you, Gimbal God, Spenny.
Here,
you're the man.
here, man. Yeah, that was good. Excellent for sure.
All right. Any closing thoughts here for the season here, Buff, or anything else you would like to add?
Just it's a tricky year. I mean, they happen. So let's just give the respect to the big mountain, man. That's all. Just make all your decisions back to our elemental movements.
Thank you for quickly coming on the show. There's no way this isn't going to help someone out there make a better decision, and at least, start a conversation, which is always important. So thank you for coming on short notice, but really appreciate your time.
Pleasure, Jody. You be good, and see you in the spring, hopefully.
All right. Thanks, John.